You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, happy Tuesday and happy New Year. I hope you all are having a fabulous 2023 so far. I am so excited to be here chatting with you today. Feeling optimistic in this new year. I do apologize, I don't have my microphone and I do have a baby in the background with a stuffy nose. So you might hear a little background noise. But today's episode's a little bit different. It's kind of a mashup of a few different things that I wanted to share with you. So I'm super excited for it. But before that, mark your calendars for next week, Tuesday, January 10th, because I am doing something big. You may have seen on social, I have a super big, exciting announcement to reveal, and you do not want to miss this. I will be announcing it live. To sign up to hear the good news, go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/New Year to sign up, and I'm going to be sharing some super exciting news. Like I said, you definitely don't want to miss this, and I'll be giving away fun door prizes, gift cards, stuff like that, and 3 people who attend to hear my exciting news will get unlimited access to my resources. What? You heard that right. 3 people who attend this live will get unlimited access to my resources. So please, you don't want to miss out on this. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/New Year to sign up. It's going to be on January 10th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So you don't want to miss this. Like I said, please sign up and join us to hear all the good news. Fun stuff coming in 2023. So like I said, this episode's a bit of a mashup, but it's all about goals for the new year. And I have for you 3 goals for school counselors for the new year. Okay, first up, use ASCA-aligned objectives to measure student progress. This is a goal that I think all of you should set. If you haven't been doing it yet, no worries. It's actually quite simple, and it sounds harder than it really is. So I'm going to play a clip from episode 52. Episode 52, I did a deep dive on this, but I wanted to play a clip where I really explain how you can use ASCA-aligned objectives when you're planning. Now, I kind of talk about how to build out those objectives using the ASCA mindsets and behaviors, but I don't really dive deep as much on the self-assessment portion of it. But I did want to mention before I play this clip that once you pick an objective for your student, you align it to the ASCA standards, you do an activity to match that objective, you can then measure it on your self-assessments. So you can use a self-assessment to determine if the student met that objective or not. So let me give you a little quick example before I do the deep dive on this clip. But let's say that you want to teach coping skills. So your objective for session 2 with your student in individual counseling is for them to identify, student will be able to identify 3 coping skills. That's your objective. Well, then you'll match that coping skills objective with some ASCA standards. Like I said, I'll deep dive explain that here in a second. But then what you can do is you can build out a self-assessment to measure if the student benefited from your services or if they improved as a result of your counseling services. So your pre-self-assessment would say something like, I can name 3 coping strategies, yes or no, or if they could have a chance to write them. Then after the session, you can have the same question, list 3 coping strategies you will use, or I can name 3 coping strategies, yes or no. So maybe before your session, they couldn't, but then you taught this objective, and then after your session, you see that they can. So that's what we're looking for. Or maybe before, they could only list 1 coping skill, but afterwards they can list 2 or 3. So that's how you can select an objective, make sure it matches the ASCA standards of those mindsets and behaviors, and then you're going to use an activity to teach the objective, and then you'll measure their progress using self-assessments. Okay, so like I said, this is a excerpt from number 52, episode 52, and I think you'll find it helpful. All right, let's learn how to use ASCA-aligned objectives. ASCA has student standards, mindsets, and behaviors, and you want to make your objectives compatible with these standards. So like I said, I'm doing this example of self-regulation, so I'm going to break it down for you. So let's say that our objectives for this student in this group is that we want them to be able to learn coping skills that they can use when they're feeling in the yellow zone or in the red zone. We want to help them make goals for using these skills. So they could say something like, next time I feel out of control or angry, I'm going to take a deep breath instead of throw the chair, right? That would be a goal that they're working on. And then we want them to identify a support system. So we want to help the students identify through one of our group sessions people that they can go to for support at school. So those are the objectives that we want to cover during our group, but now we need to make sure that they're compatible with the student standards, mindset, and behaviors. So I just pull up the document and then I'm going to go through and match them. So for example, under the mindset standards, under the category of mindset, I've chosen these two. I'll read them. M1, belief in development of whole self, including a healthy balance of mental, social, emotional, and physical well-being. Great. That's exactly what we want our students to do, right? We want them to understand the need for why they're learning these things and the need for the social, emotional well-being. We want them to have that mindset. I also chose another mindset, M2, that says sense of acceptance, respect, support, and inclusion for self and others in the school environment. So right now, the way the student is acting out, because they don't know how to properly self-regulate, they're not being very respectful for themselves or others in the school environment. So that's a mindset we want to work on for them. So that pairs very nicely with our objectives. Then moving on to the behavior standards, these are categorized into learning strategies, self-management skills, and social skills. So under the learning strategies, I picked two. I picked critical thinking skills to make informed decisions and long and short-term academic, career, and social emotional goals. So what I mean by that is the critical thinking skills to make informed decisions. I want these students to learn how to identify the zone that they're in or how they're feeling, and then to make an informed decision, to critically think about it and make an informed decision by selecting the appropriate coping strategy that they need to use. And then in regards to the goal setting, as I mentioned before, I want the student to think about their own goals and how they want to respond when they're feeling a certain way, rather than just reacting. Now, under the self-management category, I chose responsibility for self and actions. That makes perfect sense, right? The category is literally self-management. We're teaching self-regulation. So I could have technically used all of these, but I picked four. The first one, responsibility for self and actions. So that's a super important thing we want them to learn through our group, right? The second one, self-discipline and self-control. Hello, self-regulation small group. This is right on par. Effective coping skills is the third one. Again, this is so perfect. It aligns so well with our group. We want to teach our students effective coping skills. And then lastly, personal safety skills. So how they're reacting now when they're feeling out of control is that they are hurting others or themselves. So we want them to learn the self-management skill of personal safety. So like I said, that category just perfectly aligned with my group. And then lastly, social skills. I chose these two, not so much as what they'll learn during the group, but what they'll learn as being part of the group. And the first one is positive, respectful, and supportive relationships with other students. And the second one, positive relationships with adults that support success. So basically, by being a part of my group, they're going to learn how to interact respectfully with other students and with me. And they're going to identify those adults that can help them help support their success as they learn these self-regulation skills. So that where the self-management skills were directly what I'm going to be teaching them in the group, like coping skills, these social skills are skills that they're going to learn by just being part of this small group counseling experience. And I could pretty much pick those two social skills across the board, regardless of small group topic, because it's just by being a part of the small group, there's benefits. So what I did there, and again, this is an auditory platform, so I hope this has been clear, but I will link to the Mindsets and Behaviors student standards in the show notes, so you can kind of follow along. But basically, I get a referral. We know we're going to do a self-regulation group. We pick some objectives that our group's going to focus on, and then we go through it and we just highlight or circle, out of those mindsets and behaviors, which ones apply to our group. This way, we can show our principal, we can show our stakeholders, hey, I'm not randomly picking these things. I'm basing them on the ASCA National Model, on these student standards, and I'm going to collect data to see if they're effective or not. So this is really taking your counseling program to the next level, and it's really quite simple. You're going to read through them and circle the ones that match your area of need, right? That's all I did. This took not very long at all. I read through the standards and picked the ones that best matched my students' area of need. So now you have your objectives, you have your ASCA standards, you can easily create an outline that reflects the objectives and meets the standards. So your outline is going to be what you're doing with the kiddos. So we talked about this last month. We really focused on small groups. So we talked about how you'll pick like an icebreaker, you'll pick an activity, maybe you do a journal, maybe you show a video. That's what I mean by an outline. You're literally writing down, this is what I plan to do with the kids in each session. But now, based on step 1, you know it's not random. It's going to directly reflect these standards. Okay, so that was my first goal that I encourage you to set for the new year. Use and set those ASCA aligned objectives so you can plan your lessons and measure student progress. The second goal I have for you is to collaborate with your stakeholders. So I encourage you in 2023 to collaborate with those parents, teachers, community members, your admin, everybody. I encourage you to set a goal in each area of how you want to collaborate with them. So in episodes 64 through 66, I have a lot of ideas, but I just pulled out a few here for you, one for parents, one for teachers, and one for admin to kind of get your gears turning. So check out these suggestions, and then I encourage you to set a goal in each of these areas. Okay, let's hear it.
How to collaborate with teachers is to create a personalized experience for them. Now, what I mean by this, and this definitely isn't going to be every teacher, but you have those few teachers who are really supportive of the counseling program, and maybe you kind of click and you have a little bond with them. And I know I had a few like this, and they were constantly referring kids to me, and I just really appreciated what I was doing and wanted, to collaborate as much as possible. So what you can do is offer this to more teachers. Say, look, guys, these are some things I can offer you that you may not know about. This is a personalized experience that I can do for you. In general, I'm doing a class lesson every month on these character traits, right? Your monthly class lessons. But more personal level, I can consult with you. I can do a consultation if you have a student who you want to just like pick my brain about some strategies. Maybe they're not necessarily referring them for counseling, but maybe they just want you to come in and do an observation and then maybe give them some suggestions on behavior strategies or something like that. So you could do consultations. You could also do as needed class lessons. I have done this at all my schools. It's so awesome. And the teachers are so appreciative of this resource. For example, I had a second grade teacher who had students struggling with sportsmanship. They were fighting recess, playing soccer. So she's like, hey, can you come in and do a lesson on sportsmanship? So that was not part of my character calendar, for the year. But I did her an extra lesson that month. Or one time I did one on cyber safety when we found out some kids were struggling with appropriate internet use. That's a really cool thing that you can offer. And you could have like a sign up, I know you don't have a ton of time to do personalized lessons for everyone, but a couple a year as they come in, high needs topics. It's just a really cool thing you can offer. If you feel like you're stretched too thin and you don't have the time, you could, maybe forward them a lesson that they could share with the class or give them a few ideas. Again, that consultation piece. And lastly, you can help assist with conferences. So they're having parent-teacher conferences. If you're seeing one of their students individually or in a group, maybe offer to sit in the conference or come in at the end and, share the social emotional piece. Or you could kind of brief with them before they meet with the parent on some suggestions you would like them to have. How you can collaborate with and be a team player with parents. Okay, so let's dive right in. First up, over-communicate. So communication is key. And from any mistake that I've learned where parents have been mad at me, it was that I wasn't communicating enough. So, and I know you have a lot going on, and there are some demanding parents who want to know, like all the details. But you can set some systems in place to have clear expectations, but you do want to over-communicate, or at least communicate efficiently enough where they feel like their needs are being met, that they're being heard, and that you care and value their child. Because of course you do, but sometimes they forget that you have, 400 other students or something like that. So, over-communicate. How you can do this is I want you to think about it before services, during services, and after services. So, obviously, I'm not saying you need to talk to all of the parents of every kid at your school, even though you're delivering class lessons, but these will be the kids on your caseload, meaning those in your individual or group sessions. So before services start, send home a permission slip, give them a little phone call telling them, hey, check your kid's backpack. I sent home this permission slip, or attach a digital permission slip if you're doing this via email. But the phone call's a nice touch. Hey, I'm Rachel. I'm the school counselor at XYZ school. Be on the lookout for a permission slip in your child's backpack. I wanted to invite them to join us in this social skills group I'm doing. This is a wonderful opportunity for your child. They're going to learn X, Y, and Z. Blah, blah, blah. These are the times we would meet. Anyways, I'm just kind of like babbling a script of what I would say to the parents. But basically, you want to let them know what to expect of the services. That goes a lot better than sending home them finding a permission slip and saying, the counselor, I don't want you going to the counselor. Nothing's wrong with you. And ripping it up, because that happens. During services. So during counseling services, some parents trust you and they sign it and they're like, all right, we're good. Other parents are like, can you email me every week with an update of how my daughter's doing? And while we would love to do that, that's not always feasible in our calendar, right? But we do want to make them feel like they are, being kept in the loop of things within the realm of confidentiality, of course. So one easy way you can do this is if you're keeping a counseling log, you're likely writing a summary of what you did in your session. So again, we're keeping it confidential, but it could be something as simple as like, played a grief board game, or read social story on anger management, or, whatever the activity you did in the group or in the individual session. If you already have this digitally in your counseling log, simply copy paste it, shoot it in an email. It can be really informal, really brief. Hey, Mrs. Davis, I just wanted to give you an update on what we did in session today, or session this week. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me here. Now, that being said, parents will reach out, and some incessantly, especially maybe if you're like a private school or something like that, where they feel like they are owed the extra access. I hope that came across okay. I've worked at public and private, so I do think there's a difference there when it comes to parental expectations. But you can be clear on your permission slip or in your email signature or somewhere. Say, oh, you can, contact me in these hours. You can expect a reply from me during these hours, setting those expectations and boundaries. That way a parent's not emailing you at midnight, or even if they are, they're not expecting a reply at that time. And by all means, do not give out your personal phone number. Learn from my mistakes. So that's one way you can communicate during the services. And then after the services, you want to communicate by sharing any data, sharing any improvements or recommended next steps. So, oh, your child improved, so we think they are good to go back just to the general tier 1 intervention. Or, oh, we think your child needs to stay in group again, or maybe they need a little more support through individual sessions, or maybe they need a little more support. We recommend an outside service. So those are some examples of how you can communicate with parents after services have ended. Now, you can also get them in on the data collection. So using behavior surveys, send one out before services start and one at the completion of services, asking them for their opinion, survey them on their child's behavior and see how it has changed as a result of counseling services. I want to talk to you about how you can be a team player and collaborate with admin. First up, plan together, but you lead the dance. So what I mean by that is you don't want to just come in hot with all your own ideas and not even touch base with what they had in mind, especially if it's your first year, a new school or something. So, or even if you're a recurring counselor, a returning counselor, you want to sit down with your admin and chat about your plan for the year. Plan it together. What are you thinking? What do you have in mind? What are the needs here? And you may be thinking, well, it's November. What do you mean plan for my year? But you can do a mid-year checkpoint. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in December on the podcast. Some more on that later. But you can do a mid-year checkpoint to see, what's been working, what's not working, and what we can do going forward. Now, what I mean by you lead the dance is you don't want to show up with a blank notepad and say, okay, what are we going to do this year? You want to know, it's your counseling program, right? So you want to be in charge. You want to have an idea, and you're the counselor. You know better. You know the ASCA model better. And honestly, you know better than the principal when it comes to counseling, what the needs are. I mean, this is your background. It's your forte, right? So you want to lead the dance. This is what I had in mind, and you want to share your ideas, get support for them, but again, share your ideas. But it's nice to have the support for them rather than you just doing things on your own and being like, I hope this is cool. So take that time, and I think your admin will really appreciate, the effort you put forward saying, hey, can we set up a time to meet? I want to go over this, this, and this. You could even make this like a reoccurring thing. So maybe, you have a monthly meeting or a weekly meeting, something like that. I had on my counseling log, I had an admin who wanted to know what I was up to. Honestly, I was a little annoyed with it first because this is like later on in my counseling career, and I had never done this before. I'd always just kind of had like trust, but these were new administrators. They ended up not working out. They ended up like leaving before the school year was over. But anyways, they were new administrators, and they were like, we want to know what you're up to in counseling, what you're doing with the kids. So I had a counseling log. Of course, I kept it really confidential and brief, but it was just a shared Google Doc, or a Google sheet, so they could just see who I was seeing, how often, and like, a base of what we were talking about. So that was a cool way to keep them in the loop without us having to like physically sit down or a back and forth email yo-yo.
For your third goal in 2023, I encourage you to create a curriculum map. Now, in episode 50, I did this at the beginning of the school year, I think back in 2021, and I was talking all about how to do it for your school year, but you can also do it for your calendar year. So January is the perfect time to do this. If you don't have one already, sit down and create a curriculum map. Failing to plan is a plan to fail. It's cheesy, but it's true. I am such a planner. I actually have to like tone back my planning skills. When we have a lot of visitors, we're super lucky to live in Costa Rica and people want to come visit, go on vacation and stuff. And I am all about it, like planning all the things like, oh, we're going to go to a waterfall and then we're going to go on this hike and then we're going to go scuba dive. And people are like, oh, we just wanted to like chill with you guys and the babies and maybe go to the beach one day. So I have to back up my planning. I am such a planner. Actually, to be honest with you guys, this is the first podcast episode I've recorded in a while because I planned out a maternity leave and I batched a lot of work. So I'm a super duper planner in my personal and professional life. So if you are a planner, you're going to love this. If you're not a planner and planning intimidates you, this is a very simple, practical way for you to create a curriculum map. Okay, like I said, this is taken from episode 50. You can catch the whole episode if you want all the deets, but let's listen to it now.
So today I want to talk to you about how you can create a school counseling curriculum map. Now, like all things in life, you can just kind of wing it and see how it goes, or you can have a curated plan to make things a little easier. Now, with counseling, I will say it is one profession, like when you're thinking compared to teachers or something, that we do a lot less planning than everyone else just because the nature of the job is very flexible and every day looks a little different, which is one of the reasons I love the profession because it's always exciting and always something new. It's rarely boring. I doubt anyone would say counseling is boring. But that being said, having a plan can be very helpful to make sure that we're impacting as many students as possible and, meeting all of our goals and reaching students through all three tiers. So first I want to talk to you about what is a curriculum map. When I say a curriculum map, or you could call it a curriculum plan, it's basically where I break down the year month by month and then across the three tiers and data tracking or organization tools. So the three tiers, we have our tier 1 intervention, those are those class lessons, tier 2 small groups, and tier 3 individual counseling. Then data tracking or organization tools would be things for the counselor, where the first three tiers, we're talking about resources for the students. The last category, the data tracking and organization, are tools that you will be using as the counselor. So I like to break it down into those 4 columns, and then on the rows, I'm kind of talking visually here because I'm looking at mine. On the rows, I have the months. So starting with August. So, August, September, October, November, and so on. So it's kind of a grid I have set up here. And if you want a visual, I do have a freebie for you that I'm going to link to in the show notes. I'm going to link to my free year-long curriculum map that you can download and check out as you're planning your own. Or you can just use mine if you don't want to plan your own. That works too. But basically, you're going to divide it into those categories. So you're going to break it down by tier and then have that data organization category. And then that will go with each month. Now, the reason we break it down by month is because week would be a little overwhelming, but quarter is a little too broad. So monthly is perfect because each month we can kind of focus on a different area of need. And this allows us to keep in mind trends and holidays. So for example, I'm just going to walk you through mine. So with August, for tier 1, we're talking class lessons. Now, a class lesson that we want to be doing in August, meet the counselor. That's a great one to start off your year with. And like I just mentioned, I am doing that free training tomorrow where I'll be giving away a free Meet the Counselor lesson. So if you don't have one, make sure you attend the training. We'll link to it in the show notes as well, so you can sign up and get a free lesson that you can use with your kiddos. But for Tier 1 in August, I'd love to do a Meet the Counselor lesson. Keep it simple, because you have to think you're likely not starting school till mid-August anyways, so that's a lot of classes to see in 2 weeks where you would normally have an entire month. So I usually don't do a topic, like a character ed topic in August. I usually keep it pretty simple with the Meet the Counselor. Now, Tier 2, a group. So you may be thinking, groups in August already? But for example, I like to do a new students group in August. So perhaps there's some kids who are having a hard time transitioning into the school year, or they just moved here and they don't know anyone. So that would be a good time to do a new students group. That's usually the only group I'll focus on in August. And then an example of Tier 3 activities for August. Perhaps you have like a feelings recognition activity that you're doing with some individuals. So, starting with the basics, making sure that they're able to identify their emotions. And then an example of a data tracking or organization tool you would use in August would be a needs assessment. So I love sending out a needs assessment to teachers, and you can even do it to parents or even students to find out where you should focus your counseling services on that year. So I just walked through August, through each tier and through that final category of data tracking and organization tools. So that's what I mean by a curriculum map. You'll do that for each month. You're going to break it down by month and by tier. And when I mentioned that you want to keep in mind trends and holidays, what I mean by that is like the Meet the Counselor thing is kind of seasonal, right? You wouldn't do that in November. Or the new students group, while you may be having new students throughout the year, your biggest influx of new students would be in August. So that's a good time for that. Now, months like September can kind of be, vary based on your school and what you want to focus on, largely determined by your needs assessment and referrals. But for example, October, you may want to do something school-wide or Tier 1 on bullying prevention. So October is bullying prevention month, so I like to always focus on that in October, and it's still kind of toward the beginning of the year, first semester, so it's a good time to teach a preventative type lesson. Now, I also love seasonal things. I think it's super fun to do like pumpkins and Halloween themed things. I know a lot of people steer clear of those, so you want to be really mindful of your student population. But depending on, your students and what you think's best, you could sprinkle in some seasonal holiday things as well. Now, like I said, I like to do pumpkins, so that's what I mean by something seasonal or holiday you could do in October. Of course, November, it's a great time to focus on gratitude as we enter into Thanksgiving. So when you sit down, you may kind of go blank, like, oh my gosh, I have an entire school year I have to plan for across the 3 tiers. This is crazy, now what? But if you start to break it down by month, you can kind of fill in the gaps. So start with the easy wins, right? Like, October, we can do bullying prevention. November, gratitude. Then you want to think about trends that aren't just holiday related, but maybe just the way kids kind of work and the way the school year kind of goes. So if you do a lot of testing in April, maybe you want to do a study skills or executive functioning lesson or small group then. Or maybe in February for Valentine's Day, you want to do something on friendship or healthy versus unhealthy relationships or relational aggression. But you can also think of things like January is great for goal setting or cooperation. I like to do a cooperation lesson when we come back in January, because a lot of times we need to revisit. January is almost like the mini August, right? The kids have had a big break and we need to revisit some of those behavior expectations and everything. So as you're planning out your curriculum map, go for the easy ones first, like I mentioned. Go for those ones that just kind of stand out, like, oh, that totally makes sense to do that at that time of year. And then you can fill in those months that are more general, like a September or a March or something like that. Now, what I encourage you to do for those months is to make a plan. So you definitely want to have a plan in place so you don't feel blank or overwhelmed when you get to that month. But you also want to stay flexible, right? Because we want to wait till we get our needs assessment back to see what teachers need, right? So we want to find out where they think the needs are, and then we can fill in the gaps with those. That being said, you also want to stay flexible and allow room to fill in any hot topics as they arise. So what I mean by that is, for example, when I worked at the elementary school in California, the fourth grade teachers came to me one year and were like, hey, a lot of our kids found this website. It's like a chat room. It wasn't chat roulette, but it was kind of like chat roulette. If anyone remembers chat roulette, that was just creepy. I remember that being popular when I was in high school. But anyways, it was a similar like chat room with strangers kind of website that a lot of the kids were into. And we were like, whoa, we need to get ahead of this immediately. So I came in and did a cyber safety lesson. Now, I wasn't planning on teaching cyber safety or digital citizenship that month, but it was a hot topic, right? We needed to address it then. So that's what I mean by being flexible and allowing for some room for things to change or move things around, but it's good to get a general guide of what you're going to do. And of course, this is easiest when you're planning for class lessons because those are preventative. But then your small groups and individual sessions, you may need to wait till you get some referrals to consider like, we're getting a lot of referrals for self-control right now, so let's start that group right away.
I hope you now feel prepared to create an awesome curriculum map for the remainder of your school year in 2023. And if you're someone who's like, I don't know, this sounds like too much, I would much rather someone else do it for me. Like I said, I have a curriculum map freebie I'll link to in the show notes, but also you would probably be the perfect candidate for my school counseling membership, Impact. In Impact, I'm giving you all the resources you need and the plans to use them. So my fun special announcement that's coming up next Tuesday, January 10th, at 6 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing a super special announcement, and it has to do with Impact. You guys don't want to miss this. It is so exciting. And again, for attending this live announcement, 3 people are going to receive access to all of my resources. It's crazy. It's so awesome. I can't wait. So like I said, if you guys are like curious about this, want to learn how to create more curriculum maps, want to get more resources, you've got to check out this announcement. You don't want to miss it. January 10th, 6 p.m. Eastern, go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/New Year to sign up to hear the big news. Okay, guys, I hope you have an awesome new year. I hope you are feeling rested and recharged and motivated and inspired to change kiddos' lives. Okay, talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.